Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Good. Yes, right. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Vaishnavi.
Shall we start chanting, Prabhu?
Sure, Prabhu. Would you like to lead the chanting?
Okay. Yes, I can.
Sure. Hare Krishna.
Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Rama Hare Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Rama Hare Rama Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Thank you, Brajahari Prabhu. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for joining our weekly Bhagavad Gita study series. So currently we are reading chapter 5, Karma Sannyasa Yoga. So Karma Sannyasa Yoga is very special because 4 chapters have crossed, but still Arjuna is very confused with the very duty, whether he should work or not. So this chapter explains clearly by Krishna to Arjuna that he needs to act, he needs to perform his duty, but the mindset he do the duty should be different. It should be aligned spiritually instead of how he is conditioned to do materially. So this chapter is very special, and we have seen 13 verses, so 12 verses so far. Vishal took us through last week. So we will continue from where we left last week. Before that, I always like to align our, this is kind of, this activity is called Sankalpa. Sankalpa is basically setting an intention before we begin any spiritual activity. And the reason we do that is, it is very, very effective actually. The reason we do that is where our intention goes, our attention flows. Where our attention flows, our energy goes. Where our energy goes, our action, the action manifests. So we set the intention so that the attention is aligned, so that the focus is there, so that the overall efficiency of us grasping the message is effective. So I took this part of this part from the introduction section of Bhagavad Gita as it is given to us by Prabhupada. May I ask Akila to read this?
Sure. You're able to hear me?
I can.
Hare Krishna. How we approach the Gita. Out of so many human beings who are suffering, there are a few who are actually inquiring about their position as to what they are, why they are put into this awkward position, and so on. Unless one is awakened to this position of questioning his suffering, unless he realizes that he doesn't want suffering but rather wants to make a solution to all suffering, then one is not to be considered a perfect human being. Humanity begins when this sort of inquiry is awakened in one's mind. In the Brahma Sutra, this inquiry is called Brahma Jignasa, Atato Brahma Jignasa. Every activity of this human being is to be considered a failure unless he inquires about the nature of the Absolute. Therefore, those who begin to question why they are suffering or where they came from and where they shall go after death are proper students for understanding Bhagavad Gita. The sincere student should also have a firm respect for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such a student was Arjuna.
Thank you, Akila. So are we the sincere and the proper student mentioned here, like Arjuna? So what are the key points discussed in this section? So out of many human beings who are suffering, so the nature of this world is Dukkalayam Ashashvatam. Krishna says in 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So this world is basically Dukkalayam, Dukkha Alayam. Alayam means miseries, and Dukkha Alayam means place, Dukkha means miseries, and Ashashvata means temporary. Anything in this world is temporary, basically. Whatever possessions we have, whatever everything, what to talk about others, this body, right? It maximum goes for about 100 years these days. So whatever we have is temporary in this world, because that is the nature of this place. So out of this suffering place, one who is actually inquiring about this position are awakened to the next level, the spiritual level. And this inquiry in the Vedanta Sutra is called Brahma Jignasa. Atato Brahma Jignasa. Jignasa means inquisitiveness, inquiring. So every activity of the human being is considered to be failure unless he inquires the nature of the absolute truth. And this is very strong, isn't it? Because both from the science angle and from the Vedic scriptures angle, there are about 8.4 million species of living beings in this world, and human beings is one of them. And out of all the living beings, if you could see the cockroach, the ants, mosquitoes, a deer, polar bear, any living entities, the most advanced species on the planet is the human species. And we take this particular form for a reason. So this highly developed intellect is for a particular reason. And if we miss this point of using this intellect to advance in the spiritual line and make our life perfect as given to us in the scriptures, and Prabhupada says that is considered to be failure. Therefore, those who begin to question why they are suffering, where they come from, and where they go after death are proper students of understanding Gita, because Gita is basically a philosophical text spoken by Krishna to Arjuna that answers all these questions. And if you see, Gita was not just spoken by one person, it is constantly between two persons, constant questions from Arjuna and constant perfect answers from Krishna. So it is always questioning and answers. Even if you take any Upanishads, the top 12 primary Upanishads, namely Katha Upanishad, Kena Upanishad. Kena means questions. So any Upanishad basically talks about questions and answers between a guru and disciple, Sishya. And such a sincere student is Arjuna. That's why he could able to grasp the message and perfect after the end of Kurukshetra. So before we get into further details, I would like to ask, what are the 5 topics of Bhagavad Gita? You can unmute and share, you can text. We shared this before in our sessions many times, and this is very relevant to today's discussion as well. Any thoughts? Five primary topics discussed in Bhagavad Gita, namely Ishwara. Anyone?
Jiva.
Okay. Abhishek Prabhu has raised his hand. Vijayari Prabhu said Jiva. Go ahead, Abhishek Prabhu.
Ishwara, Jiva, Prakriti, Karma, and Kala.
Perfect. So these are the 5 topics covered in Bhagavad Gita end to end in the 700 verses, 18 chapters. And today we will be seeing 4 out of 5. In just the 5 verses we are going to see today, we will be covering 4 topics out of 5. So it is very, very important verses. Actually, every Bhagavad Gita verse is very important, equally important. There is no one superior important. There is not something that is inferior. No, everything came from Krishna for the right purpose. And today's verse talks about 5 topics. So just quick recap of last week, and perhaps some of you might have joined for the first time. So chapter 1 is basically Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Currently we are in chapter 5. So I'll just give a quick recap of 4 chapters. And so chapter 1 is basically Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Vishada means questions. So Arjuna, Vishada means confusion. So Arjuna was confused. So both armies, the Pandavas and the Kauravas, are assembled in the battle of Kurukshetra. And everyone is in the mood of fighting. But Arjuna saw the opponents to be his relatives, friends, Bhishma Pitamaha, his grandfather, Dronacharya, his teacher. So he's completely bewildered. And the turning point at the end of chapter 1 was he dropped his weapon. So him being a Kshatriya, the warrior, he dropped his weapon thinking that I shouldn't fight because of 4 primary reasons. And what were they? If I do this, I will create an havoc, because such a massive killing is very cruel. And even if I win this battle, whom will I enjoy the kingdom with without my family members being there? And it will basically destruct the Kula dynasty. Basically, both Pandavas and Kauravas belong to the same dynasty as Kuru dynasty. So it will be a massacre if we do that. So, and it also incurs a lot of bad karma on me, impious activity, papa. So I'll not do this. And he puts his arrow down. And then Krishna talks about the real knowledge about the soul, which is in the 2nd chapter, Sankhya Yoga, the analytical studies of yoga, where Krishna starts with, so 2nd chapter is very important as it talks about 4 tattvas, Guru Tattva. So Arjuna, he says, I cannot do this myself. Oh Krishna, I am a soul surrendered unto you. Please tell me for certain what is good for me. And so when the student is ready, at that point, just before that, Krishna used to be his best friend. So that's why he agreed to be a charioteer for Arjuna. At that point, when Arjuna said, so I take you as my guru in this case, you please tell me what is good for me. At that point, Krishna starts to talk about, oh, Arjuna, you're baffled, you're disturbed because you're thinking that you're this body, and everyone you see assembled there is your relatives, is your kin, etc. But you're not this body. This body is temporary. You are soul, Atma. And this Atma is eternal. There is no birth, no death. Only this body dies, which is the nature of this body. So those kind of Atma Tattva Krishna starts to talk about. And he also introduces 2 duties, basically the Swadharma, that the bodily duties, the worldly duties. So Arjuna being a Kshatriya, he needs to fight. And being the Sanatana Dharma is the soul's duty, how we elevate the soul's position from this material world and try to achieve perfection. So, and then Krishna talks about Atma Rama. So a yogi who does his duty perfectly is self-satisfied. What does that mean? He is satisfied in his own self. Atma Rama. Rama means pleasure. And in 3rd chapter, Krishna talks about karma, which is work. So where Krishna tells we need to work so for Arjuna in this case, he needs to fight. And then he talks a lot about basically but he also talks karma creates karmic reactions. Krishna tells in 3rd chapter. So if we do a karma with attachment, so if I'm very attached with some results, for example, if I am a student, if I'm very attached to scoring high marks, that attachment causes lust. And this lust, when satisfied, it causes greed. I want more. I want more of this experience. And if this lust is not satisfied, it causes anger. Oh, why I didn't get it? I need to make it happen. So it becomes anger in the heart. And when both emotions come into picture, it disturbs the mind a lot. People can't think clearly. And when the mind is disturbed, intelligence is lost. So they lost the way. So Krishna says, you need to act the right way, oh Arjuna. And in the 4th chapter, it's all about work. So I said work, but 4th chapter talks about work and devotion. So you need to do your work as a sacrifice to Vishnu. So there Krishna talks about the Ishwara Tattva. So there is Vishnu, and you need to offer your work as a sacrifice to Vishnu, which is 3.9 verse. And without doing that, if you think you are the doer, you will definitely be entangled in this material world. And in the 5th chapter, in the last verse, Arjuna begins the chapter by asking, oh Krishna, you say we need to work in 3rd chapter, and then you again says we need to work in devotion. He's still unclear what should I do, what is best for me. And Krishna in the 2nd and 3rd chapter, he says both are equally good. Actually, he doesn't put one on the top, one on the bottom. Both are equally good for achieving perfection. But out of these 2, which is more appropriate is work in devotion, because renouncing work is very difficult. So sannyasa means renunciation, karma means work. So renouncing work is very difficult because by nature we are very active. This activeness doesn't come from the body. It's the soul's nature. The soul's nature is active. So we need to actively engage in the duty, but the attachment causes bandha, bondage. So we need to actively engage in the duties without attachment to the results, says Krishna. And how is that possible? If you dovetail the activities as a duty and not entitled to the activity as my activity, I am doing this. And Krishna says work in devotion is better. And Krishna also talks about the Sakama and Nishkama Karma Yoga. And Nishkama Karma Yoga is someone is basically the yogi of higher order. And Sakama Karma Yoga is yogi of slightly below order. He works. So basically, I think we all belong to the Sakama Karma Yoga category. So where we have ambitions, we have material motives. Of course, the motives are good. We need to do well in our work, studies, and we also align with scriptures and offer some kind of charity for good activities. So those belongs to Sakama. And Nishkama basically is pure devotees of the Lord, where they understand these scriptures and they conduct their life in such a way that whatever is bare minimum for their life, they keep it, and whatever that they give their best shot. So if they're doing their work, they give their best shot. They achieve all kind of results. But even if they fail and they succeed, they are not very agitated. They are not very their emotions doesn't depend on the results. Their full energy goes into the activity, not the results. So Krishna talks all about that. So this is the overall recap of what we have seen so far in this chapter. So today's discussion starts with 13th verse. Can we have someone recite this shloka? Vaishnavi, do you want to give a try?
Krishna. Sarvakarmani manasa sanyasya sukam vasi navadvare pure dehi naiva kurvan na karayan.
Karayan.
The embodied,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
The embodied living being who are self-controlled and detached reside happily in the city of 9 gates, free from thoughts that they are the doers or the cause of anything.
Thank you, Vaishnavi. I hear a lot of birds behind your back, so I'm sure your background is quite colorful and nice. I like those birds.
They're also attending the class.
Okay, that is good. So just a note, right, before we get into, whenever there is a dash above any word, we just emphasize that word, like sarva karmani manasa. So manasa has dash, the last A has dash. So we just emphasize that manasa karmani. So that is just a note I thought to share. So the verse says the embodied living being who are self-controlled and detached reside happily in the city of 9 gates, free from thoughts that they are the doers or the cause of anything, says Krishna to Arjuna. So whom Krishna is saying? Krishna is talking about the Jiva Tattva. So the embodied living beings is the 8.4 million species, but the embodied living beings are basically a living being, which is the Atma, is taking a particular form of a body, like every one of us, like any other creatures that you see outside, which has a particular form of body. And this particular form of body is based on 2 factors. It's based on the karmic reactions, karma, and it's based on bija, desire. So at particular form of body, I engage in all kinds of activities, and this karmic reaction, along with the desires I wanted to enjoy more, amalgamates and decides the next form of body when the soul takes the next reincarnation. So the embodied living beings is talking about us, but who are self-controlled and detached. Basically, it's talking about the yogi who is still in the human form of life, but he is self-controlled and detached from the material things. Reside happily in the city of 9 gates. If you see city of 9 gates, what city is Krishna referring? What is this analogy Krishna is giving? Basically, city is Krishna is referring to this body. And 9 gates, 9 Navadvare. So if we observe this body, right, we have 9 openings. Can any guesses about what are these openings that Krishna talks about? So basically he's saying such person who's self-controlled and detached happily resides in this body. Oh, you can say you initially said this world is dukhalayam, place of miseries, but how can such a person be happily in this body? Because he's self-controlled and detached, free from thoughts that they are the doers and the cause of everything. If you observe in this material world, right, those people who thinks that I am doing this, uh, because of me everything happens, I am the proprietor of everything, those people are always miserable. They are not happy at all. They may create that temporary illusion that they are happy and I'm very good, etc. But those mindset people are always miserable in heart. They don't reveal it. This is not me saying, but this is Krishna saying actually. And this city of 9 gates, which is referring these 9 openings. Navadvare pure dehi, hamso lelayate bahihi, vashi sarvasya lokasya, stva varasya charasya cha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's living within the body of a living entity, basically he's referring to the Paramatma within this body. So this body has 2 souls, the soul which is us, and the super soul which is the Paramatma. So the Paramatma which is living in this body is the controller of all living entities all over the universe. The body consists of 9 gates, namely 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, 1 mouth, 1 anus, and the genitals, basically the reproductive systems and the excretory systems. So the living entity in his conditioned state identifies himself with the body, but when he identifies himself with the Lord within himself, he becomes just as free as the Lord while even in the body. Shvetashvatara Upanishad 3.18. Any thoughts so far so good?
Very clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Akila. Yeah, of course, this is an ideal state. Krishna's talking about a yogi who realized these knowledge, putting them into applications, and those people are really happy, genuinely happy. Actually, happy is a duality term. When someone is happy, sadness also come into picture. In this world, any human emotions has 2 sides. So these 2 sides exist together. These are 2 sides of the same coin. If someone is happy, they have to be sad. If someone is satisfied, they have to be dissatisfied. And that is why Krishna, towards the end of this chapter, he's talking about the concept of peace. Whereas peace doesn't have any sides to it. Peace is someone who are eternally peaceful. There is no duality associated with the peace. And Krishna says one who applies all these knowledge into practice, even though he is in this dukhalayam world, the place of misery, he is still peaceful. And the 2 key takeaway from this verse is such people are self-controlled. For example, if I'm too attached to the food, I know that by overeating, it's not healthy. It's just making me lazy and tired, etc. So my intelligence knows that is eating too much of what even though if I like the most, if I overeat, it becomes food poison in the stomach, and it just disturbs my overall like couple of days. So, and they are detached from the fruits of those activities, because we saw earlier that attachment to fruits causes bondage, and this bondage is very illusioned. It's just the cycle goes on and on. So here Krishna clearly says the embodied soul is neither the doer nor the cause of anything. So the question arises whether God is the actual cause of actions. So this is way ahead from where we are now, but Krishna tells there that the manifestation of mode of goodness can be experienced when all the gates of the body are illuminated by knowledge. So by the proper knowledge, the true knowledge of Vedic scriptures, all these body parts, basically, so if you, the Navadvara referring this Shvetashvatara Upanishad verse are basically the sense engagement focal points. So the 2 noses, what do the nose do? It's just smelling, right? And what it smells smells the fragrant smell. The mouth eats a lot of food. It tastes the delicious food. Ears basically hearing. So all these are like the focal points where humans get distracted. All the sense enjoyment happens through this Navadvara, and in that particular shloka, Krishna says, with the right knowledge, all these Navadvara are illuminated and they are not misused. They are used in the right way. Krishna says in that particular verse. So moving on to the next verse, can we have someone read this shloka? Just a try. Srinivasan, do you want to try?
Okay, let me try.
Thank you.
Na kritavam na karmani lokasya srajati prabhu na karma pala samayogam svabhavas tu pravartate. The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, or does he include people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature.
Thank you, Srinivasan. And I remember seeing you maybe you're joining us for first couple of times. Welcome to our sessions. So the core message is Krishna says all this is enacted by the modes of material nature. So if you remember the 5 topics of Bhagavad Gita, Ishwara, which is the God Tattva, Jiva is talking about us, the souls, and Prakriti is the material nature. And what is this material nature? This is basically the mode of goodness, passion, ignorance, Sattvic, Rajas, and Tamoguna, Triguna. And if you are very good at PowerPoint slides or any MS Word documents, I remember Brajahari Prabhu given this example in one of the earlier sessions. So any colors, infinitely possible colors, can be achieved through 3 primary colors, RGB, red, I think green and blue. So likewise, anything that you see in this material world is made possible by the combination of these 3 gunas, triguna, mode of goodness, passion, ignorance. Even if you take us, right, so we are not fully good, we are not fully passionate, we are not fully ignorant, but we are a mix of all 3. Like if you take all the 11 participants in the call, we are all the mix of like certain percent of good, certain percent of passion, and certain percent of ignorant. And this is not constant for all individual. It just varies time to time. If I am genuinely good, if I like to give charity, my mode of goodness factor is going up. And if I'm at workplace, my mode of passion has to go up. So that way I need, I put my thumbs down. And when towards the end of the day, when most of the people are tired, they are ignorant and they go to sleep. So sleeping is not like ignorant, just don't take it literally. But the essence is all of us are made of everything that is happening in this world is made up of these 3 guna, goodness, passion, ignorance. And Krishna says the embodied spirit, the embodied soul, the master of this body. So body is just the matter. It's just made up of the 5 gross elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. So the embodied soul, who's master of this body, does not create activity. Oh, this is Krishna's telling that I am not creating any activity. I means the soul, not creating any activity. Nor does he induce people to act. I'm not influencing people to act as well. Nor does he creates the fruit of the action. So means Krishna says I'm not doing anything. All these are enacted by Maya. So the 3 triguna that I'm talking about is the Maya or Prakriti in Sanskrit. So Prakriti is the one who is executing everything in the world. So what do I do? Krishna tells in the Bhagavad Gita that I desire for an activity. I desire for the fruits of an activity. And Prakriti is the facilitator. And who's approving that? Krishna tells in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 23rd verse, that I reside as super soul Paramatma in everyone's heart. I does two things basically. So Paramatma has two functions: Upadrashta, Anumanta. You can find later 13:23. Upadrashta means overseer. So Paramatma never comes into our desire at all. He never. So Paramatma, what he does is basically oversee and permit whatever desires we develop at heart. He approves, and it may immediately happen. It may not immediately happen. For example, I like buying Tesla. I mean, this is just a fictional example. So if I desire to buy a Tesla tomorrow, it doesn't necessarily have that desire to be sanctioned and to Tesla is in front of my HDB or whatever next day, right? So not all desires are executed on the same day. It happens by so many X factors, basically karma. So and this desire doesn't fade. This desire will always be carried by the subtle mind. And I remember we see this research before in this forum, that a human on average human develops about 60,000 thoughts a day. So out of these 60,000 thoughts, how many desires we have? Like if I'm going on an MRT, I'm seeing two food courts on the right, on the left, on my waist, and I like eating pizza. I'm like eating like whatever. So those desires are still there, but I'm not fulfilling the desire. So all these desires are just carried away in the mind, and this desire causes further reincarnation. So coming to this point, we are not the doers in this material world. We are the desirers. So the doers are basically Maya. Krishna says all this is enacted by the modes of material nature. And some may be inferring why I put this lotus image, because lotus is the purest of all flower. It doesn't have like, it may not have the beautiful, the intoxicant flavor coming out, but it is pure of the higher order, and that is why God has it always in the hand. If you go to any Hindu temple, especially Vishnu temple, they worship lotus because the lotus represents a perfect yogi, how he can live in this world. Even though the lotus, any flower, if you put in the water, it may get wet and go underwater because it absorbs something, it becomes heavier, it goes underwater. But lotus, even though it is on any X water, it doesn't get wet, it still says the same. So a perfect yogi is like a lotus. Even though in any environment he is subject to live in this material world, he is the same pure lotus, or the pure yogi. Okay, so moving on. I thought this verse was very relevant. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. So Krishna has said this before to Arjuna, but on this context, Krishna is reaffirming this concept. So even though we know this knowledge, why we are acting in a way that we are the doer is because we are bewildered by the influence of false ego. Our ego says, I am this doer. So we have like, I'm sure some of you know this before, we have shared this in the forum. So our body, right, we have the gross body, which we all can see externally, which is made up of earth, water, fire, air, ether. And we have the subtle body inside. The subtle body is made up of mind, intelligence, and false ego. So even if we look at any thermography, etc., we cannot see the subtle body. This system is created in such a way only gross body is visible, and the subtle body is mind, intelligence, and false ego. So the reason we do with the mentality we are the doers is because we are influenced by the false ego. So then if someone asks me, right, so if you're saying about false ego, then what is the true ego? Is there something called true ego? Any thoughts on this? difference between false ego and true ego? Kimaya? Your voice is a little feeble. I can't hear you. Can you?
True ego is yourself, is the self. False ego is what, as you said, thinking that we are the doers.
Okay. Thank you, Kimaya. That is correct. So false ego is basically the ego that I think that I am this body. So this concept of aham mameti. Aham mameti is a word could be found in Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srimad Bhagavatam is another Amala Purana, Mahapurana. In that particular verse, it says aham mameti. Aham means I. Mameti means this is my possessions. These are mine. So with this concept of I, so I is referring to that body. So I have no knowledge about the soul. I am thinking that I am this body, and so that is false ego. This is not me. Krishna says from the very fundamental knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, I am not this body, I am the soul, Atma Tattva. So identifying one with the body is called false ego, and identifying one with the soul, one who is in the true knowledge, and that is the true ego. So understanding that one is the soul and not this body. So as Kimaya said, understanding to be the self. So by the influence of false ego, only he thinks that he is the doer of activities, and in reality it is carried out by Maya, says Krishna. So the next verse, the third verse of today, anyone is, can we have Aditi? Do you want to try? Aditi? Okay. Leela Sundari Mataji, would you like to try? Oh, okay.
Yes, Prabhu.
Go ahead, Mataji.
Te kasyachit papam na chaiva sukritam vibhuhu ajnanena vritam jnanam tena muhyanti jantavaha.
Translation?
Okay. Translation. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied body beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge.
Thank you, Leela Sundari Mataji. So if you remember, the first verse talks about Jiva Tattva, the second verse talks about the Prakriti or Maya. Here it talks about the Ishwara. So Krishna here says, nor does the Supreme Lord assumes any sinful or pious activities, Papa and Punya. So nor just the Lord assumes, he doesn't, both Papa and Punya doesn't go to him. He's transcendental to all these. He's like superior. He is higher to all these material reactions. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. So Krishna tells this to Arjuna. So 2 points. The first point, as we saw earlier, so those papa and punya coming from the karma. So karma creates karma, karmic karma phala. Phala means results. So this results could be both positive or pious activities, or it could be impious activities. And both doesn't, Lord doesn't assumes any of these pious and impious activities, whereas embodied beings, which is the soul, in this body, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. So as we saw earlier, the real knowledge is the knowledge that I am the self. But even though I know this on the ephemeral platform, I know this, I know this knowledge, still I act in the from the bodily platform. The moment I go to work, I think that I am this body and I have the controllership mentality. And why is this coming up? Even though we speak of Bhagavad Gita, whenever we go to the office or any kind of work atmosphere, when the mode of passion is high, this knowledge is not coming to us. And the reason is because of the ignorance which covers this knowledge, because of the conditioning. We have been conditioned to believe that we have this body for a very long time, not this birth, but for a very, very long time. We don't know how much birth we took before from the concept of reincarnation point of view. So it's because of the compounding ignorance, it is very difficult for us to uncover this and see the real knowledge. Even if you remember, right, the most recited Guru mantra before beginning of any spiritual discourses is Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So I offer obeisances to that Guru who clears this ignorance and shows me the torch of light of true knowledge. So that Guru is the pivotal point who clears this ignorance by opening my eyes with the torch of true knowledge. So that is about text 15. And text 16 would Abhishek, do you want to give a try?
ज्ञानेन तु तत् अज्ञानं येषां नाशेतमात्मनः तेषामादित्यवत् ज्ञानं प्रकाशयति तत्परम्. When, however, one is enlightened, the knowledge by which science is destroyed, this knowledge reveals everything, as the sun lights up everything in the daytime.
Thank you, Abhishek. So here Krishna talks what happens if one is established on the true knowledge. So when, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which the nescience or ignorance is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. And this is very, very practical, right? Even though the night is pitch dark, I cannot see anything. The moment sun wakes up in the morning, everything without any external light, everything is lit up. So likewise, Krishna is comparing sun to the true knowledge. So if the true knowledge is really awakened in the heart, this conditioning is removed, the ignorance is destroyed, Krishna tells to Arjuna. And April 10, we will be celebrating Ram Navami, the appearance day of Lord Ramachandra. So, and I thought a verse from Valmiki Ramayana was very relevant to this context. So there, the verse is very relevant. Despite the combined light of full moon, and all the visible stars in the cloudless sky, the night does not go. But the moment sun rises, the night makes a hasty exit. The light of the sun is such that the darkness cannot remain before it. The light of God's knowledge has a similar effect in dispelling the darkness of ignorance. So it is basically Krishna comparing sun with the true knowledge. And the second last verse we will talk is this one. Because we are running out of time, I'll read the translation. When one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge and thus proceed straight on the path of liberation. So what happens when one understands this knowledge and firmly established in the knowledge? Krishna tells the cause and effect. So cause is someone who is self-controlled, detached, who understands this knowledge, who established in the true knowledge. Those are the cause, and Krishna is talking about the effect of what it happens after that. When one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, so he understands that I am not the doer. The Prakriti is doing this, and I'm continuously going in this cycle. So the soul's duty is to seek the supreme shelter, the super soul, Bhagavan. So if one with that knowledge is fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of all the misgivings. The ignorance is destroyed through complete knowledge and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation. So any Vedic scriptures, the ultimate goal of the Vedic scriptures is mukti, liberation from this particular cycle of birth and death. So we are going in the cycle for a very long time, and the goal is to serve the Lord, which is the ultimate goal. But the effect of that supreme goal is basically we are liberated from this body of birth and death. So one who is established and firmly fixed on that path, he's surely established on the path of liberation, says Krishna. And this is a very, very celebrated celebrated verses of Bhagavad Gita. And this is our final verse for today as well. Can we have Vartika? Would you like to give a try?
Yeah. Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmane Kavi Hastini Suni Keva Swapake Ka Pandita Samadarsana.
Okay. Suni Chaiva Swapakecha. Yeah. You can read the translation.
Suni Chaiva Swapake.
Sure.
The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see the equal vision, a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater.
Thank you, Vartika. So here Krishna tells about the perfect yogi, one who's, so the first verse talks about self-control and detachment. So one who's applied throughout his life and kind of established in this knowledge. So any new habits we wanted to develop, we have to practice consistently over time, and then this becomes habit. And when consistently followed over time, it becomes the character itself. Likewise, when such knowledge put into action, practiced for a long time, it becomes the nature of us. So such a person, the humble sage, by all the true knowledge, he is naturally humble. Because so what is the opposite of humble is arrogance. And who is arrogant? One who thinks that I am this body and I am doing this everything. So that false ego brings that arrogance. Whereas a true ego person who understands I am not this body, I don't want to acquire a lot of things, etc. So such an ideal yogi is humble by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and a gentle Brahmana. You can see here, this image is excellent. So this is the humble sage. He sees the gentle Brahmana, the cow, the elephant, a dog, and a dog eater, Chandala. So he sees everyone equally because he doesn't see them from the bodily platform. Because if I look at this dog eater from a bodily platform, oh, this is just a dog eater, untouchable. So those kind of material mindset comes. But this true sage who's established, self-realized person living in this world, he sees everyone equally because he sees the soul and the super soul within. He knows that this body is temporary, it will fade away with time, but he sees everyone and he gives utmost respect to all of them. And such a person is surely eligible to liberate because he doesn't have any more attachment in this material world. So this is like the ideal figure. Krishna tells this to Arjuna. So these were a couple of 5 verses. Basically, a quick recap. The first verse talks about first was the embodied being in this body who is self-controlled and detached, doesn't become entangled and never thinks that he is the doer, etc. He is aloof from the doership mentality. So that is the Jiva verse. And the second is the Prakriti verse. All this is enacted by the material nature, Maya or Prakriti. So third verse is Ishwara never assumes any pious or impious activities performed. It is aloof. So Ishwara is above everything, so it is aloof. And the fourth verse we saw is this, one whose mind and intelligence is fixed, is firmly situated on the path of liberation. He is sure on his way towards perfection. And such a person, when he lives in this world, he lives like a perfect yogi. He sees everyone equally. Sama darshanaha. Those were the discussions for today. Any thoughts, questions? You can unmute and speak up.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Akila.
Thank you so much for the beautiful presentation. Is it right to say that human form is the most blessed form, even when compared to the beings on the heavenly planets? Because once their credit points, like good or bad, everything gets over, and there, I mean, they'll come back to any of these forms. I mean, the lower forms, and only in the human form we have the opportunity to actually practice and get liberated.
Thank you, Akila, for asking that. I always have this feeling that you speak very mature, and you should speak to us, like take classes to us at some point soon. And you're right, what you said is right, actually. So the demigods that Akila talks about, who's living in the higher planets. So we are human species in this. So if you go to Bhagavatam, there is this subject matter of Sarga and Visarga, creation and subcreation. So it talks about 14 elementary planets. And there is the upper planetary systems, middle planetary systems, and the lower planetary systems. So we are in the middle planetary systems. And the upper planetary systems are basically devatas, demigods, who are with superpowers, living with an opulent life, Indra, all those demigods. So when they are living in an opulent condition, the chances of them enjoying those opulences are high. So they cannot be naturally humble. So human beings are like in the middle ground. We have higher opportunity to be higher opportunity to achieve perfection at a very short span than their devatas. So who are these devatas? The general question from the new audience, right? One who does a lot of pious activities in his previous or earlier lives. All these pious activities compounds them to take the next birth. Because in the previous birth, he might have desire to enjoy more, live in an opulent state of life, etc. And if he does more pious, he takes such a form. And in that particular form, his chances of sense enjoying is more. So humans in this form has higher chances when compared to those devatas, is my understanding as well. Any other thoughts? Yeah, Akila, do you want to add something?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
And second question, or rather, I don't know if it's a comment or a question, but oh, I forgot. So we, when talking about desires, right? So the second this Jiva desires, automatically everything. So it happens with the material nature. I mean, the desire is being activated and then sanctioned by God, permitted by God. So is it that every single thought of us gets implemented? Because we have a shloka in Bhagavatam that on not every, I mean, I don't know if I understood it right. So not every thought, unless and until it is applied, there is no karma attached to it. Correct?
Okay, so this concept of karma is very big actually, and the cycle of karma is also very big. So why karma is coming? Because we have bija, desire. But what is the root of bija? Why are we desiring material things? Because of the avidya, ignorance in heart. So avidya is the culprit, the root cause of this material existence. And this avidya is the one that Krishna is referring to here. And this, because of this avidya, because I don't understand this, I am this body, I wanted to acquire more and more wealth. And because of this desire, I'm endeavoring my whole life and I'm doing a lot of karma. And because of that, there is karma phala, results of associated with that. And and those karma phala, there is something called manifested karma and unmanifested karma, aprarabdha karma, prarabdha karma. So some karma, that some desires put into action, some will manifest immediately in this life, but some desires will not manifest immediately in this life. Could be n number of reasons. Those are unmanifested desires, aprarabdha karma. So in the next life, those will come along, not just this body, but like many births. So those aprarabdha karma will come along. This will manifest at some point and doesn't manifest at some point, based on the facilities. For example, if I want Tesla by end of tomorrow, that don't manifest at all. But this desire will still continue and go on. So, so desire is what this Jiva does out of ignorance, and super soul oversee, Jiva has this desire, okay, let me permit it. But the material nature, who is bound by karma and time, so all these three are interconnected: time, karma, and kala. Time, karma, and Prakriti. So all these three things play with themselves. I mean, not play, but they work together and kind of manifest and unmanifest at different time intervals. Nobody can accurately say that this is how karma manifests. So on the basic soul desires, super soul approves or permits, and Prakriti along with Kala, it manifests at some point. Even Bhishma Pitamaga, who is considered the grandfather of the Kuru dynasty, he's like super intelligent. He's one of the 12 Mahapurushas, or he's like 12 very pure devotees of the Lord. Even he tells that concept of karma is very difficult. I cannot understand. So I would always tell, who am I to completely understand this ununderstandable concept? So I think those points were helpful, Akila.
Definitely. Thank you. And third, regarding the true ego, right? So in addition to the self, it's that true ego is that the understanding that we are part and parcel of Supreme, right?
Correct. So true ego, the concept of ego exists because we are in this body. When we are liberated, there is no ego at all, because ego is a material concept. Ego is a material body, gross body, subtle body. I'm sorry, it's a subtle body. So true ego is the knowledge that I am the soul when I am this body, when I am in this body. So right now I am in this body, you are in your body, but we both have this knowledge that I am the soul. So that is the true ego that we have. When we put into right actions, apply the knowledge into practice, and we conduct our life in such a way that we perfect our life in this end of this life, we become out of this entanglement, and there is no concept of ego exists. There is no true ego, because I am the soul. The soul by nature is Sat Chit Ananda. So there is no concept of ego at that point. I am the spirit soul, pure spirit soul.
Got it. Thank you so much. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Akila, for wonderful questions. Anyone else? Last 1 minute.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead, sure.
Okay. Is it too late to learn Sanskrit as an adult? Or if not, it's not too late, how can we learn Sanskrit?
Okay, that's a good point. So learning Sanskrit is one point, but you're learning Sanskrit to understand the scriptures, or you're keen about learning the language, and that is why you're
understand the scriptures.
So if that is the case, we have this like Bhagavad Gita as it is book. So this book has all the Sanskrit verses, and it has word to word. So you can start with Bhagavad Gita because it is the supreme Upanishad. And this book has each word spoken by Krishna, like word to word meaning. And if you go towards the back of the book, it clearly tells what are the words, how it needs to be pronounced, and what are the meaning for each of these words. So to start with, I would suggest to purchase this Bhagavad Gita, or you can find it online as well. I will share the link to you, Srinivasan.
Okay.
Yeah, Bhagavad Gita is very good to start with, because these words are repeated in Upanishads and Vedas as well, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Srinivasan. Any other final thoughts, questions? Anyone?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Abhishek.
Just one question, Prabhu. You mentioned that we have the choice to make the desires. But I was thinking that even desires are influenced by the modes. For example, one who is in mode of passion, he will desire, as you mentioned, the Tesla car or all these things. With mode of ignorance, he will desire to sleep or be engaged in intoxication. And who is in mode of goodness may desire knowledge and wisdom. So how is this desire? So his desire is also seems to be affected by the modes. So what exactly is in our hands?
That's a very realized or observed question for sure. It's a very nice question. So you're right, Prabhu. Desire, we have this independence to desire, but we are just so conditioned in this body. We have been so conditioned to live in certain lifestyle, certain way. If to give it the same lame example, if I'm going in an MRT, I'm seeing two shops, one pizza, etc. I don't necessarily desire to eat pizza, but the impression I have in my mind because of the pizzas I had before, and I had this impression it tastes nice. Oh, this is my favorite food. I don't necessarily desire, endeavor to desire. I need to eat pizza. It automatically. Some desires are like not very controllable, uncontrolled. To be honest, if I see any sense objects like any food, etc., I don't necessarily desire, but the conditioning happens to be agitating us. So desires are not very independent. It are interdependent actually, because it is so conditioned with the modes of nature. That is my understanding.
Also, can I add, isn't it that like with that question, so the initial desire is because of us, so, right? So, and we have been piling up each of these desires because of which we are conditioned. And because of that, all this material nature, so because of something that we have desired, the material, and we have been conditioned, so we have been given this sets of personality traits, this sets of liking, disliking in this present birth because of the past birth's conditioning. So basically, the desire is still on our free will.
You're right, Akila. So where does the first desire come from? The first desire come from that the fundamental desire we are here is I need to enjoy separately from the Lord. So that desire is coming from the free will that we have, is to enjoy in this material world away from the Lord. So as you said, that fundamental root cause desire is coming out of ignorance, but it is still within our control. It's not conditioned by the Prakriti or Triguna, is my understanding.
Yeah, that's what I tried to explain. Thank you.
Thank you, Akila. I'm sure we have more questions, but out of time, we are running out of time. So thank you again for joining this weekly study series. Feel free to invite your friends, family, etc. It is a very beautiful journey. We just are in the middle of 5th chapter. We still have up to 18 chapters we will cover in detail. If you see, we are going verse by verse in detail to the depth we can. And definitely these knowledges will help us improve in our spiritual journey as well. So with that note, thank you very much for joining again. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Now I invite Akila to do like a group short kirtan in your usual style. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Is that like people are okay to stay back?
We can do, instead of 2, we can just chant 1 time and then we can leave.
Okay, fine. So Hare Krishna. So basically, from the participants list, so I'll just call out in order of the participants list. So everyone can, whoever I call out the name, we can chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra once, or you can sing it in your own comfortable tune. Yeah, so let me start. Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Hare Namev Kevalam, Kalau Nastyeva Nastyeva, Nastyeva Gatiranyatha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Brajahari Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you. Anish Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you. Kimaya.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you. Leela Sundari Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you. Raman Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you. Srinivasan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Thank you.
Thank you. Vartika.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you. Vaishnavi.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you. Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Hare Nam eva kevalam, kalau nastyeva gatiranyatha. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you everyone for joining. We will meet next week, same time, Friday, 7 to 8 p.m. Singapore time. Have a good weekend. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hare Krishna.